Welcome to the Preserving Family Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to equip you to gain insight, information, and inspiration to help you protect, teach, and guide your family during these turbulent times. Our goal is to provide tools and resources to help you strengthen and preserve your own marriages and families. Now here are your hosts, Dr. Mark and Janie Ogletree.
Well, everyone, so good to be with you today in the middle of the winter. And just want to let everyone know, once again, another little shout out that our church history trip, that first week of June 3rd to 12th, still has a few openings. If you're interested, you can just email me at ogletreemd@gmail.com, but it's Murdoch Travel. You can find it on their website as well. Love to have you. Here's the thought that I've been having today, but isn't it kind of crazy that there's such a ramp up? You can even use the word crescendo from about the end of October all the way through December 31st, January 1st. It's the holiday season. It's incredible. There's energy, there's busyness, there's lights, there's joy, there's anticipation. And then almost just like that, it's all over. And all of a sudden, it's January the 2nd, and company has left. All the fun things on the calendar that we were doing for that last 3 months are gone, and now it's just back to real life again. Often it's cold, and I know one of the things that's often depressing to me, not in a clinical way, but it's just kind of a depressing thought, is I just don't like it when it's dark at 5 o'clock at night. Dark and cold, right? It's dark, it's cold, it's dreary. In some places it actually snows. We used to remember that in the old days here in Utah. And so we call it the winter blahs. This strange emotional drop where the days are short, life is gray, everything feels kind of flat. And by the way, we ought to mention this, that there's a lot of sickness that goes around this time of year. I think all of us know someone who's very sick with some kind of flu bug, right? And so that goes around. And so once again, calling it the winter blahs. And I want to just take a look today. This is, what we'll call kind of one of our mental health segments. But why this happens, what research says about it, and 5 powerful principles, I think spiritual, psychological, and practical, to help us overcome these winter blahs. Now, why the blahs happen? Number 1, that reduction of sunlight and mood. Short daylight hours affect serotonin and melatonin, which does regulate our mood and our sleep. In fact, about 5 to 10% of Americans experience seasonal affective disorder, and up to 30% experience subclinical winter blues, which we would kind of categorize as fatigue, low motivation, just being kind of irritable. January and February are peak months for depressive symptoms and for low motivation. By the way, it's always interesting to me that as we get to the month of December in my counseling work, usually the schedule lightens up quite a bit. You get a lot of people starting to cancel appointments and saying things like, you know what, we'll just pick it up after the holidays. And then about by that second week of January, we are at full capacity again because people are starting to experience some of these depressive symptoms, the low motivation, and just the idea that it's time to go back to work and getting our life in order. So that's number 1, the reduced sunlight and the mood that we deal with this time of year. But there's also number 2, that just post-holiday emotional drop. The holidays bring anticipation, social connection, meaning, and novelty. And afterwards, there's this dopamine drop. The brain's reward system resets and everything feels kind of dull. So if you feel blah in January, you're not broken, you're just human, you're just normal. But the gospel of Jesus Christ and science both teach us that light can be created even when the days are dark. No question about it. So the first principle to overcome the blahs would be to create light deliberately. Meaning, let the sun shine, everyone. Let the sun come in, open those blinds, turn the lights on. Sometimes people even like to have light therapy or some kind of light that they put on their face. But I think it's a good idea to use bright lights, candles, uplifting music, warm colors. I love the idea that men are that they might have joy. We want to have joy even in the wintertime. And so lighten things up. Find a way to lighten up your home. Number 2, move your body and lift your mind. Exercise is as effective as antidepressants for mild to moderate depression. Now, that's a powerful statement. Or in other words, for mild and moderate depression, you don't necessarily need medicine. We need exercise. It's one of the first things I ask everyone who comes into my counseling office who are manifesting some depression symptoms is, are you exercising? And guess what? The answer is almost always no. No, I haven't done that for a long time. Just 20 minutes of movement can increase dopamine and serotonin. It's something that we need. Even outdoor walks, and for those of you who live in Utah right now, that's very possible when the high is getting into 60 degrees in February, or even walking in malls or in athletic complexes and facilities. Of course, some of you are in more wintry climates right now where there's ice and snow on the ground, and you may not be able to do that, but there are places to go, to be in gyms, to be dancing, to be playing pickleball indoors, just whatever exercise program we can introduce to ourselves. And I know that even for me, last year I decided I need to do better at this one. And so not only would I exercise in the morning, but in the middle of the afternoon, I would bring a change of clothes to work, and I would go down to, at BYU, we have the Smith Fieldhouse, and walk a couple miles and jog on that track in the middle of the day. And I couldn't believe how much that brought me back to life, but also increased the mood, because we know that today we have the opportunity to listen to some awesome podcasts or whatever while we're walking or running. And it's just a great way to re-energize and reset our bodies in the middle of the day. Everyone, I remember years ago where I retired, so to speak, from the church educational system and transitioned fully to marriage and family therapy. And I was running my own practice in the Dallas area, and it was awesome. But because of my location, I think that practice just blew up, literally, because I was one of the only LDS therapists at the time in that part of town. I went from maybe seeing on a part-time basis 10 to 12 people a week to 45 people a week in a matter of a month. And I felt myself burning out. I was seeing people all day, Monday through Friday, and I was seeing people on Saturday mornings. I was the bishop of the ward, so I was dealing with problems with members of our ward on occasion at nighttime in interviews. I was gone all day Sunday. I was just getting burned out, and I thought, I've got to change something here. And I remember deciding that besides doing a little bit of exercise in the morning, I'm going to take a siesta every day. And so I would work from 8 to noon, and then from noon to 3 I would have off. And so what would I do? I would go to the gym for those 3 hours. Well, I wasn't there, I promise, for 3 hours. But I was able to go to the gym, work out for a couple hours, come home, have lunch with my wife, and just kind of have some downtime. And then I'd go back from 3 to 7. And I know, once again, that sounds like a grind, but at least having that middle of the day exercise routine was really starting to help me quite a bit, along with the one I was doing in the morning. Principle number 3, schedule fun. Schedule joy. Don't wait for it, create it. Behavioral activation research shows that planned positive activities reduce depression more effectively than just waiting for motivation to happen or with something fun to happen. And so plan out events. Plan fun things. Family nights. Lunches with friends. For those of you that are outdoors people, golfing, pickleball, trips to a more southern remote location where you can do outdoor activities this time of year. I just think of the early saints here in Utah. They discovered St. George. All right, it's February. We're going to go down to St. George where we can be outside this time of year. But now with planes, we can actually fly places and get into the sun. I think if I could do it every year, I would. I would take a cruise to a tropical place in the middle of the winter, I think, every year. Now, I can't do that because of my job, but a lot of you probably could, and I think that's a really smart thing to do. I have to do the smaller incremental things on a 3-day weekend or something. But there are just so many things that we can plan and do. And I love the idea that joy rarely shows up uninvited. It comes when we schedule it. And so I'm going to invite everyone to plan something fun to do between this month of February and by the end of March, where you and your family can just have some kind of getaway. For me, what it does for me is it gives me something to look forward to. I love that Elder Jeffrey R. Holland, who I promise I will keep quoting for the rest of my life, said this: a drugstore psychologist once said that people need 3 things to be emotionally healthy. Number 1, someone to love. Number 2, significant things to do. And number 3, something pleasant to look forward to. All of us need that. And I know for me, that keeps me highly motivated when I know that, oh, we have this cool thing coming up right around the corner. That's going to be awesome. All right, let's go. All right, now this one is number 4. And you won't be too surprised, but serving someone else, doing something for someone. The research insight is this, that acts of service increase oxytocin and dopamine, reduce stress, and improve mood. Volunteering and helping is definitely linked in many, many research studies to lower rates of depression and higher life satisfaction. Or in other words, let's not only serve people and do things for people at Christmas time, right? We can do that all year long, and I know a lot of you do. Ministering visits, handwritten notes, anonymous service, family service nights, encouraging youth and families to serve during the winter months. We all love a verse in the Book of Mormon. King Benjamin taught it that when we are in the service of our fellow beings, we are only in the service of our God. Now, I want to share with you a little personal story here that I think can be helpful. When I was a missionary, and I had been out for 3 weeks, in a freak accident, I broke my pelvis. And I found myself in a hospital in Seattle, Washington, for almost 2 weeks. And I got to be honest with you, it was kind of a lonely time. I mean, here I've been with a companion, and we had a really tight zone with great zone leaders. We were always doing fun activities together on P-Day and always checking in on each other. And I went from that to just being in a hospital room by myself. Now, I would have visitors. Visitors would come every so often, and that included the missionaries, as well as members of the ward would come in and check on me, which was super nice. One of those families I'll never forget, and I will call them by name, because I'm sure they're long gone. They were a couple in their 80s, and this was back in the early 1980s. The Richards. I don't remember their first names. It was just brother and sister Richards. And when I was in the hospital, brother and sister Richards brought me a cassette tape player, as well as some cassette tapes, by a man named William Waite. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard of William Waite before, but he was quite an incredible speaker. He was super funny, super optimistic, and he had all these great stories, an incredible speaker, an incredible delivery style. If you have any way to get your hands on a William Waite cassette tape from the 1980s, I would say to do it. And so I would listen to those tapes, and I kind of became a William Waite fan. I started really liking this guy, and I loved the things that he was teaching and how he taught it. And one of the stories that he shared, and I'm just going to try to recall it by memory. There's no transcript for this, and I haven't listened to it for a long time. But it was a time in his life where he was feeling the blahs. And he said, it really wasn't explainable because everything in my life was pretty good. I was a counselor in the bishopric, and so I enjoyed that, he said. They had 7 children, and they were a great family that had a lot of things going and a lot of activities, a lot of things to do. Brother Waite taught for the church educational system full time. He was the institute director. This was all in California, by the way. He taught early morning seminary. And he just told of, in the middle of this winter time and feeling these blahs, he was driving home from teaching his seminary class pretty early in the morning, and he saw a hitchhiker. And he just thought, you know what, I'm just going to pick him up. Now, not advocating that at all. Not advocating that we pick up hitchhikers, but he just thought, I'm going to do it. And He said the guy was really nice, and he could tell he was down on his luck. And Brother Waite has a great conversation with the hitchhiker, drives him into town, gives him some money so that he could get a haircut and some other things. And Brother Waite just talked about how good he felt after that, and thought, wow, he felt some of the joy returning to his life just by doing something like that for someone else. And then the next scene, he shifted to this. Back in the day, we had a program called Know Your Religion, and some of you know about Know Your Religion. And I spoke at Know Your Religion back in the late 90s, early 2000s in the Texas area, and loved that program. It was awesome. But basically, if you are familiar with Education Week, you would take an Education Week message, and someone like me or Brother Waite or whoever would travel to a stake on a Friday or Saturday night and deliver what we would pretty much call a fireside, although it was kind of more of a class. But anyway, and it was just kind of fun. And the reason I loved it so much is I just got to you get to meet the saints, right? You got to be with the people in these different parts of the country. And anyway, Brother Waite was in California once again, and he was speaking at one of these Know Your Religion programs in one of the stakes. I don't remember exactly where. And he had arrived at the hotel earlier in the day. His message wasn't going to be till 7 o'clock that night at a stake center somewhere in California. And so he was just kind of lounging around in the hotel, just kind of relaxing, when he heard a lot of clamor and clatter and noise and chaos outside. And he opened the window, or he looked through the window of this hotel room and saw that there were paramedics, a fire truck, and that as he went out there to try to figure out what happened, there was an older man who had drowned in the pool, or at least they thought drowned in the pool, but they were able to revive him. And so Brother Waite just thought, okay, that's great. And they hauled this man off in an ambulance to the local hospital. And as Brother Waite went back to the room and recognized that he actually had 4 or 5 hours before his talk, he thought, maybe I should go to the hospital and visit this guy. Through conversation with other people at the scene of this, at the pool, at this hotel, the rumor is that this older man actually tried to take his life by drowning himself in the pool. And so Brother Waite became intrigued by that and thought maybe this man needs some help. And as he thought about it, he went to the front desk and he said, hey, do you know where they took this man who almost drowned in the pool? And they told him what hospital they had taken him to. And Brother Waite realized that hospital was about an hour away. And he thought, you know what? Just the thought of being a good Samaritan was probably good enough. I don't know if I need to do any more than that. Surely there's got to be some other good Samaritans in that neck of the woods. And so as he was walking back to his hotel room, he thought, come on, you've got all the time in the world. Go visit this man. So Brother Waite got in his rental car and drove to the hospital and realizes that because he's not a family member and has no direct relationship to this man, they're not going to let him in to go visit him in the ICU unit of the hospital. And so Brother Waite has to come up with a plan, and this is actually pretty funny. What Brother Waite does next is actually pretty incredible. Now, if you've ever seen a picture of William Waite, he has that perfect white flowing hair like we would kind of assume or see in some of our general authorities. And he probably looked like a doctor. Anyway, since Brother Waite can't get in to the hospital, into the ICU unit, he's kind of walking around thinking, I wonder what I could do here. And he sees a white doctor coat and a stethoscope. And he just puts it on. And he puts it on, and then he walks. And this was probably back in the day when emergency rooms weren't locked up like they are now. And so then he just walks in the emergency room and acts like he knows what he's doing. And you've heard people say that before. Maybe you say that before. I tell my kids all the time, just act like you own the place, right? Just act like you own the place. And so this is what Brother Waite does. He just walks in, and he says the first thing that happens is a lady sitting in a wheelchair calls him over and says, Doctor, could you help me? I have been here all day and have not gotten any help. I just need someone to take a look at me. And Brother Waite says, well, what's the problem? And she kind of starts describing the problem to him. And he says, you know what you need? You just need some food, all right? And so he sees one of those people walking, a nurse or someone walking with a tray of food, and he says, "Hey, we need a tray of food for this lady right here." And so he gives her some food. She starts to eat it, and he just stays with her for a minute, and he says, "How do you feel?" And she said, "I feel a lot better." She says, "In fact, I feel like I could probably go home." And he says, "Well, why don't you? Why don't you go home?" And so she says, "Okay, maybe I will. Where do I pay?" And Brother Waite says, "You know what? This one's on the house anyway." And so she just walks out of the emergency room. Brother Waite eventually finds the man. He finds the man who drowned in the pool, or who almost drowned in the pool. Gets into his room. They start up a conversation. Brother Waite introduces himself. And then Brother Waite says, "Do you have any friends in this life?" Because the man had told him that he just didn't have any friends. And so he said, "I think I have one. I have one friend, and we served together in World War II, and here's his name." And Brother Waite pulls out the Los Angeles phone book. I do remember that it was in the Los Angeles area, and starts to thumb through to find this man's number. And he calls the man, and the man actually answered the phone. Brother Waite tells him the situation. "Hey, your good friend from the war is here. He attempted suicide, and he really needs you today." And that man, credit to him, came right over. Brother Waite said, biggest, burliest man he'd ever seen, but he came right over to help his friend. So that was going on. Brother Waite helps him. He ministers to him. He stays with him, teaches him a little bit. And there's a great kind of ending story to this one as well. Well, Brother Waite says that eventually this man who stays in touch with Brother Waite joins the church and becomes a member. And then Brother Waite says, and then about a year later, he receives a Christmas card where this man and his wife had been sealed in the temple. So how cool is that, right? Now, once again, awesome story. I wish I had for you the actual transcript, and maybe one day I'll track that story down on one of my cassette tapes. I think I actually had that moved over to a CD years ago, but I have no idea where that would be. But a great story about just serving others and how much joy and happiness. And by the way, Brother Waite did report that. He reported that here he was feeling the blahs in this wintertime, and now he feels great. He just feels the Spirit return. He's enthused. He's enthusiastic. And he's loving life, and the joy is back. The last principle I would share with you today when it comes to overcoming the blahs, principle 5, is I love this idea of anchor ourselves in meaning. Anchor in meaning, not just in mood. And what do I mean by that? When I say meaning, another way we can talk about that is intentionality, purpose. Check this out. Meaning is a stronger predictor of happiness than pleasure. Remember Viktor Frankl and his research that meaning sustains people even in their darkest hours. In other words, having purpose. And that's one of the things that we see often in mental health is when people start to lose the meaning and their purpose in their lives, especially as they become older. When I say older, getting into the 70s and 80s, and now you have a group of people that have done incredible things throughout their life. They've been productive in their families. They've been productive in their professions. They've even been productive in the church in terms of having significant things to do and serving and helping others. And now they find themselves in a place where there's really nothing for them to do, or not, at least not as much. And that's why we're so grateful for the temple. We get our older folks over to the temple to serve and to help, and often that joy can return. So spiritual routines right now become crucial, right? Diving in deep to come follow me, diving in deep into the scriptures, diving in deep into reading the words of our living prophets, improving our prayers and our communion with our Heavenly Father, engaging in temple worship more often and once again in a more significant way. I know Janie and I, one of the things that we've enjoyed at this stage of our life is trying to plan little temple trips. And we have wonderful temples around us, but it's kind of fun to go to a place that's a few hours away to visit that temple and have a little getaway for a little time. Especially if it's a temple in a warmer climate, right? Keeping a journal, a gratitude journal, having a purpose in the winter. I know that in our home, back in the days when I wasn't so busy, the wintertime was actually an incredible time to do some indoor work on our house, because we knew in the spring and summer we'd be doing outdoor things, but the winter brought times to remodel a room, do some painting, do some changing some light fixtures, just spiffing the place up a little bit, right? So set a winter purpose. This winter, I want to learn something. I'm going to write something. I have a goal that I'm trying to accomplish. Let's work on it. Feelings fluctuate, but meaning anchors us. And when mood is low, purpose can carry us. I love that idea. So as we close today, think of this reframing of the winter. And although winter is a season of dormancy, it's not death. It's not the end of the world. In fact, keep this in mind that roots often grow deeper when growth is invisible. And Christ works quietly in the winter seasons of the soul. That's just something I read the other day. Another quote, in the winter of life, God is still at work beneath the surface. Love that idea. So I would say pick a principle this week that we've talked about today. Maybe it's texting a friend, going for a walk, planning an activity for your family or for you and your spouse, finding a way to add more light in your life, actual physical light. Maybe even just sharing this episode with someone who's feeling the winter blues could really help them out. So set a goal, work on something, work towards something, be excited, plan for the future, work on those goals that we set on January the 1st, right? Enjoy reading a book, enjoy being with your loved ones, whatever it takes. But I love the idea of just planning something quite spectacular, right? Anyway, everyone, it's great being with you today. I love talking about these winter blahs because I know it's easy for me to be deeply affected by that downtime that happens after Christmas, almost that downturn of all that excitement and joy that all of a sudden just goes flat. But this is a great thing for us. And by the way, for those of you who are into this, the Olympics are coming this month in February. That's another kind of fun thing to be part of. So maybe there's some activities and some things you can think of doing with your families involving the Olympics. All right, everyone. I hope you have an awesome day. Let's do something. Let's plan something super cool to do for our families within the next month or two, and then look forward to that with great anticipation. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you and look forward to being with you next time.